It's hard to believe that it's been nearly 3 years since Land Rover first brought back the iconic Defender nameplate here in America, and since then, this model has become one of Land Rover's best sellers, with the company moving nearly 16,000 units here in the US last year. This outsold the Land Rover Range Rover Sport, which typically was always the best seller in the Land Rover lineup. Now for 2023, Land Rover is literally expanding the family of the Defender to now include this model here. This is the 2023 Defender 130. A new longer version of the Defender 110. It basically stretches out the rear of the vehicle by about 13.5 inches to give us more space in the third row and expand the cargo capacity. So if you guys have always had your eye on a Defender, but you needed the additional space because you needed the room to carry up to 8 people, how does the 2023 Defender 130 stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now before we start talking about the styling changes for the Defender 130, I want to pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now Land Rover offers several different engine choices on the Defender 90 and the Defender 110. However, for the 130, they simplify things. You only get one option, a 3-liter twin turbo inline 6. Now that 3-liter twin turbo inline 6 with an electric supercharger also has two different states of tune. There's the P300, which offers up to 296 horsepower, but then there's also the P400, which is the one I'm showing you here. That offers about 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. It's also augmented by a 48-volt mild hybrid system. So that's right, this thing is twin charged. It's turbocharged and it's supercharged with a 48-volt mild hybrid system. So very complex engine. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and fuel economy is rated at 17 in the city, 21 on the highway. It drops by about 1 to 2 mpg compared to the 110, because remember, this is a bigger vehicle with more weight. It's a Land Rover, so 4-wheel drive is going to be standard with a 2-speed transfer case, and it also has a locking center diff along with their terrain response driver assist or drive mode feature, where you can adjust the software computer to tell you or to adjust to whatever kind of terrain you're driving on. Now this model can still tow a pretty good amount, up to 8,200 pounds when you guys go for the tow package, and Land Rover says it should do 0 to 60 in around 6.3 seconds. We'll test it out with our equipment, and it also has a top speed of around 119 miles an hour. Now, of course, this is a bigger vehicle, so it's heavier. It weighs in at just under 6,000 pounds, or about 300 pounds heavier versus the 110. But let's go ahead and close up the hood and talk about the exterior styling. Now, when this vehicle first debuted 3 years ago, I was a huge fan of the design, and I have to say, it still looks fantastic. It's aging extremely well. Land Rover pretty much nailed the whole retro modern design cues. You can instantly, put its lineage with the old Defenders, but it also has a much more modern appearance to it. I love how wide and just kind of military looks. It has a very truck-like, just brawny appearance to it, to the design. My tester is painted in Carpathian gray. It's a $1,000 upcharge. You can see it's got a really beautiful metallic fleck to it. It says Defender loud and proud on the hood. You have a really nice looking grille, and then all the Defenders come standard with their full LED headlights with this kind of half moon halo LED. It's also got LED turn signals, LED low and high beams. You also have LED fog lights, and then this is not aluminum, but it has an aluminum look to it. And that's going to really, again, show off just how tough this vehicle is. I also still love how the hood kind of has this like diamond plated look, although this is just plastic. There is a trim called the Defender X, which will give you kind of a two-tone look. This model here is the first edition, so you don't get that feature. Now, moving around the side profile, you can see Land Rover offers this vehicle in 3 different sizes: the 90, the 10, the 110, and then the 130. The interesting thing about the 130, when you look at it from the side profile here, this is probably the most ungainly looking angle. The wheelbase is around 119 inches long. So in reality, I want to call this thing the Defender 120 because of the wheelbase size, but it actually has the same wheelbase as the 110, where the difference is in the overall length. Land Rover basically pushed out the rear overhang by 13.5 inches. So this vehicle here is just over 201 inches long. Now that's without the spare tire. When you add the spare tire at the back, it stretches at over 211 inches long. So that's about the same length as like a Ford Expedition or a Jeep Wagoneer, for example. The wheels, you can see my tester for $2,000 has an optional 22-inch silver painted wheel. I don't like the finish on the wheels, although they do have a really nice metallic fleck on them. I would have preferred like a dark gray finish. You have these massive brakes with a 6-piston or 4-piston caliper. Actually, maybe that's a 6-piston. And then the suspension comes standard with air suspension. I have it in its normal setting now. This offers around 9 inches of ground clearance. You can lower it to offer as much as 8.5 inches of ground clearance, and then you can also jack it up to offer around 11.5 inches of ground clearance. So Land Rover says this model here will forward up to 35 inches of water, so nearly 3 feet of water. So a lot of the capability is kind of kept with this vehicle. You can see there are some functional openings over here. The mirrors are also black painted. My tester also has a panoramic glass roof along with these roof rails, which you can also support, I believe, up to 225 pounds on the roof of the vehicle. You can see from this angle here, you really can see the kind of stretch to this vehicle. It almost kind of reminds me of a school bus. But overall, let me know what you think of the vehicle's design. You can also see it has that trademark little floating panel here between the two glass panels. This area here has been stretched to give you more of a view when you're sitting in the third row, which we'll talk about later. And then moving around the rear, you can see it's got that spare tire, the classic iconic spare tire with the hard cover that's painted. It also says Defender. And then you have these same taillights, which look fantastic. These are full LEDs that include LED turn signals and whatnot. So overall, the design hasn't really changed too much aside from just the extra length. But let's go ahead and talk about the cargo capacity, because you can see it's got a side opening rear hatch, which opens the wrong side technically for the US market because it opens up toward the curb. But you have just over 15 cubic feet of space back here, around 15.3. That's a 5 cubic foot increase versus the 110 if you spec the third row. Remember, the 110 also offers a third row that only seats 2 people in the back. This now seats 3 across. This space is pretty small still. I suspect most people, when you carry 8, won't be able to put too much stuff back here. A lot of these family mid-size crossovers offer as much as 20 cubic feet. I think that's kind of the magic number. This is better, but it's still not great. You can raise and lower the air suspension from here. You can see these are the floor mats for the vehicle. There's no underfloor storage here, but there is a full-size spare. So your jack is going to be under there, of course. If you want to fold these seats down, you can see it's manually folding. You have to first put the headrest down, and then you just pull on these little levers here, and that will fold the seats down for you. The interesting twist about this car is it doesn't offer a flat load floor. As you can see, it kind of raises up. When you fold down the second row, that also continues to raise up. This is around 35 cubic feet of storage space with the third row seat down. That actually matches the number of the 110 when you have the second row seats up. So again, not really an improvement there. If you fold down to the third row or the second row, that expands the cargo to around 76 cubic feet. That's actually about the same again as the Defender 110. So it's surprising to me that Land Rover didn't actually improve the cargo capacity when those seats are folded. However, they did, because of the rear overhang increase the space when you have the third row seat up. So that's an improvement, but if you're thinking this has even more maximum cargo space than a 110, I'm sad to report that it's actually about the same. So let's go ahead and take a look at the interior of this 2023 Defender 130. That's what you all are probably wondering, because it is the longer version, more practical. Let me first show you guys the key fob for the vehicle. This is the traditional Land Rover key fob. It's got the usual lock, unlock, open up the trunk, although it's not a power lift gate. And then you can also, looks like, flash the high beams and maybe use the panic button. The key itself is a nice size. It feels really sturdy and really high quality. Sadly, it looks like there's no remote start from the actual fob itself. Now, there is a button on the outside here. That's what you use to lock the doors. You can see the mirrors also fold in. To unlock the door, you have to push the button again. There's no sensor on the back of the door handle to unlock the door for you. Now, you can see my tester has kind of like this caramel brown interior, which is really beautiful to look at. It's also a nice two-tone effect. It looks fantastic with the Carpathian gray. You can see this is kind of their upgraded supple leather. These seats are heated and ventilated, and they adjust in like 16 or 18 different ways. And it also offers 3-person memory on both sides. So again, this is a Land Rover. You expect them to be a little bit more premium, and they are. In terms of the door panels, you can see really nice, beautiful soft leather on the upper portion down here as well. I also like how there's some durable aspects here, like or more rugged, tough aspects like the exposed screw heads. This right here feels a little bit cheap, but again, it feels a little bit more on the durable end. I love kind of the light gray that you find splashed throughout here. And then my tester also has the 10-speaker Meridian sound system, which sounds pretty good actually, considering how this is on the lower end of their lineup. Down here it is hard touch plastic, but you do have some good storage. And then, as you can see, no running boards, but you can lower the vehicle and you can set it to lower itself automatically every time you get in and out of the car to help shorter folks like myself get in. Without it, you can see at the normal height, this is a little bit cumbersome to get in. You kind of have to grab the steering wheel. There's no handle here. But once you kind of hoist yourself in, it gives you a nice commanding view of the road, which is really, really important for people who like this type of vehicle. Getting in and shutting the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. It doesn't have a soft close function. Again, you'll have to buy a Range Rover if you want something like that. The start stop button is down here right by the shifter. When I push the button, you can hear with the brake pushed, or with the brake pedal pressed down, it has a slightly different starter noise because of that mild hybrid system. So it kind of just whirs to life. And then this interior is pretty much the same as the other Defenders that I've shown you. All of them now come standard with an 11.4-inch infotainment system. It includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now there is a time I heard due to the chip shortage where Land Rover was putting a 10.25-inch screen in these vehicles on the lower trims, but luckily my tester has the bigger screen. The system itself is a big improvement over prior systems. It is still a little bit slow to respond and boot up, but you can see I love how the screen floats. There's also kind of an area back here where I can, kind of do a little pass through behind the screen. And I also like how it just looks nicely integrated into the actual dashboard. Now, just like the door panel, you can see there's real leather and stitching on this part of the dash. There's a nice little shelf here. I also like how it says Defender there with some durable, like kind of rugged materials. They feel just kind of waterproof. This area here is soft touch injection molded plastic. Again, it doesn't feel all that luxurious, but it feels really durable, which is important for a vehicle like this. The steering wheel, you can see, is huge. It's a 4-spoke design. It has kind of like interesting colors and textures. There's some leather covering the airbag covers. It says Defender there in the steering wheel itself. The steering wheel has a power tilt and telescoping feature, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. Land Rover puts their control over here on the right side as opposed to the left or below the steering wheel. There's also a heated steering wheel along with these touch-sensitive buttons, which have a nice clicky feel to them. The horn sounds good. It doesn't sound puny. It sounds nondescript, but appropriate given the size of this vehicle. This controls the 8-speed automatic transmission. When I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full 360 camera, which has really good views. You can see the camera on the rear is mounted underneath the spare tire, so you have to keep mind of that when you're backing up, that you have an extra 10 inches to clear when you are backing up, so kind of keep that in mind. There's also off-road cameras you can look at, towing cameras, so all of this is really nice. For some reason, the 3D camera view isn't working here, but it does have a full top-down 360 view, which again, the graphics are pretty nice to look at. You have 4-zone climate control. You also have heated and cooled seats, which you can see Land Rover does their heated seats in the actual control here. So I have to push down and then rotate it to the left or the right to go to the cooled or the heated seat function. The heated seats in this vehicle work extremely well, which is nice. I like how all these buttons have a clicky, high quality feel. Your drive mode selector is here. You can see there's several different modes. There's an eco mode, an automatic mode, a comfort mode, mud and ruts, gravel, sand, rock crawl, wade, configurable. Most of the times I just have it in the automatic setting. There's no sport mode in this mode, but there is a sport mode in the actual transmission. So if I want to go to rock crawl, it's telling me I have to select low range, which is another separate button right here. Down here you can see you've got 2 USB charging ports, a C and an A. There's a really good amount of storage underneath here. Cup holders, there's some beautiful walnut veneer wood. It's real wood trim, of course, which is nice. And then over here you can see wireless phone charging pad, which works pretty well. 2 cup holders, and if I look at this is nice and padded. Open this up, you can see there's a nice little refrigerator box in this vehicle, which is actually standard. This gets pretty cold. I've had these drinks in here for like an hour or two, and they're nice and cold, so I love how this comes standard with a refrigerator, which is nice for those long road trips. The seats are also very wide, comfortable, and supportive. The leather feels really high quality, which is nice. There's a digital camera rearview mirror here, which is great for looking out from the rear, because without it, you can see it's blocked by head restraints, so you can't really see too much. There is a power retractable shade here, which again is great for blocking out the light. And then this also opens up. You can see you can just tilt it if you'd like, or you can open it up entirely, and it looks like it only goes over, actually it goes pretty far back, but still, I'm surprised it doesn't go further back than that, but it's nice that you can kind of let in all that natural light if you'd like. Going over here, you can see the glove box is not too big. It's a bin style. It's damped, but not lined with felt. You have an all digital display over here, which I forgot to mention, which is slightly customizable, where you can customize the look to do a dial, the 2-dial, 1-dial, or you can do your GPS. You kind of control it from this little function here where you can just change the layout and whatnot. It's controlled via these steering wheel controls. The adaptive cruise control switches are over here as well. Land Rover does not offer a heads-up display on this model, which is fine. But overall, you can see the interior has a very roomy feel, especially with how wide it is. Material quality is also much better than its American competitors, but again, this is a more expensive vehicle. But it just feels special. It feels tough, it feels rugged, it feels durable, but it also gives you the luxury vibes that you expect from Land Rover as a brand. Moving on to the second and the third row of this vehicle, excuse the wind, these doors are pretty heavy and they're also not very big. This is where I think Land Rover should have increased the wheelbase of this vehicle to give you a bigger rear door here, and I'll show you kind of the disadvantages of that when we kind of get into the third row. You can see the materials back here are the same as the front. You have the same exposed screw heads, the nice leather, the real wood, the metal speaker covers, which is nice. Land Rover says you have around 38 inches of legroom here in the second row, which is good. The seats, they do recline and they fold down flat, of course. The vehicle itself is wide, so you can easily fit 3 people across. As I get back here, you can see space is plentiful. Let me shut the door and show you guys what it's like. You can see at 5'7", I can get back here across my legs. I can just get really comfortable. These seats also move forward and back. Again, that's to assist with giving third row passengers more room. This is with it all the way back. If you have it up 1 notch, you can see, or it's not really 1 notch, but you can lower the legroom in the second row. It's still very nice, although again, in max position, this is where you're gonna have the most space, obviously. Land Rover does not offer any captain's chairs, so if you're looking for that, I'm sorry, they don't offer a 7-seat version. These are all 8-seaters. If you fold this down, you can see there's an armrest that has 2 cup holders, which is nice. The leather itself feels really good. These seats are also heated, as you can see. They are heated, and it looks like they also are ventilated. So my tester has a climate package that includes heated and ventilated second row seats, which is nice. You have your own set of climate control, so it's 4-zone climate control. And then you can see down here, I thought these were power outlets, but they don't actually open. So I'm not really sure what these are for. Maybe my tester is missing the separate option that includes it. There are also no manual rear sunshades. And then if you're looking for the Safari windows that you find on other trims, those little porthole windows on the roof, it is not available on the 130, so kind of keep that in mind. But you can see with how wide this vehicle is, somebody my height, I can easily, or my size, I can easily sit in the middle. So you can realistically carry 3 people back here, which is definitely nice. You have 2 storage pockets, again, and then really nice padded materials. Now let me get into the third row of this vehicle, which I'll show you how to do. You don't pull this lever over here, you have to pull this upper lever here, and that will slide the seat forward. Now this is where a wider door would have been nice, because look at how tight this is to get into that third row. It's definitely small back here, so for somebody who's not really athletic, this is gonna be a little bit of a challenge to get back here, but let me show you guys the space when I get back here. Now this is with the seat all the way back, which I think is the way that most people are going to realistically use it. This is with the seat slid up forward, but as you can see, there's no legroom in the second row when it's like that. But getting back here, you can see for somebody my height, you can see this is my legroom. My knees aren't really touching this, although it's getting pretty close. But you can see headroom space is pretty good, actually. I'm only 5'7", so those of you who are over 6 feet, you may find this to be a little bit tight. But I'm surprised at how low the floor is. Actually, this is comfortable. You have heated rear seats back here. I wasn't expecting that, so that's nice. You have rear seat air vents, which is great. No power outlets, however, back here, but you do have some map lighting, LED map lighting, and then there's also a manual sunshade here. This does not open, but it's nice how it lets in a lot of light. And then earlier outside, I showed you this window is bigger, so it gives you a view out of the back. So again, this is going to improve the comfort here. If you want to sit here in the middle, this is also possible, but again, it's going to be quite less comfortable for the 2 outboard seats. I also noticed there's kind of like a big gap right here where like my butt kind of falls into the gap when I'm sitting there. That's for the seat belts, but overall, this is impressive. I wasn't expecting to find this level of space in the 130 in the third row. So if you need to actually carry average size adults back here, it's very possible. Just remember, the space back here is really tight. So if you do that, they're gonna have to pack pretty much light if you're gonna get everybody to their destination with all 8 people on board. So I've been pretty lucky to be able to drive many different variants of the new Defender. Remember when this car came out, Back in 2020, it was an instant hit for Land Rover because of its perfect retro modern design. So now that we are behind the wheel of the 130, which is the longer version, not necessarily the longer wheelbase, but the longer version, this is the model that's designed perfectly for American families because it seats 8 comfortably. It only comes with the inline 6 turbo supercharged with a 48-volt hybrid system. Now, because it's longer by over a foot, this adds a few hundred pounds of weight to the vehicle. Now, it's been a while since I 0 to 60 tested this vehicle, but let's go ahead and quickly do that and see what we can get. This vehicle comes standard, of course, with all-wheel drive. It has an 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, and we have nearly 400 horsepower. So let's go ahead and see what we can get here. Makes a really good sound. I like the way that straight 6 sounds, actually. 6.35 seconds, which is exactly what Land Rover claims. They claim 6.3. It's roughly about a half a second slower versus the 110 because of the extra weight that you get with the additional length. That time is perfectly acceptable, although in the luxury space, things are getting faster and faster. But what I love is how smooth the 8-speed automatic is. I also love how this inline 6 sounds. It's a really sweet sounding engine. It makes torque everywhere, and it just also likes to rev. I like how the engine also makes a really good sound. I think it's one of the best sounding engines that I've heard in a long time. And I just love how smooth it is. It's a very smooth and refined engine. But we'll try another run later on in the video. But just driving this thing down the road, do I get a sense that it's actually a bigger vehicle? In terms of the width and in terms of the wheelbase and in terms of the height, it's the same as the Defender, the regular Defender. So if you've driven that 110 model, this will feel pretty familiar. All of that extra length is in the rear overhang, so the butt is now longer. And at 211 inches long, this is about the same length as something like a Ford Expedition or a Jeep Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer or a GMC Yukon. Not the longer version, not like the XL version, but I also want to point out that 10 inches of the 211 inches in the overall length is from the rear spare tire. So really this vehicle is a little over 200 inches long, which is still manageable. But do I feel it when I'm driving this vehicle down the road? Not really. It's only in tighter parking situations where I'm going to notice the extra length, but thankfully this vehicle has cameras and sensors everywhere. It's got standard adaptive air suspension, so the ride quality is excellent. I can raise and lower it with the push of a button. There are drive modes that you can change. The transmission has a D and an S mode. And then there's also a terrain response button here where I can push that and I can choose all different kinds of terrain. No dedicated sport mode in there, but that doesn't surprise me. This is not a sporty vehicle by any means. The steering is electric and it's precise, but it's definitely slow. The suspension feels very soft as I start pushing around corners. You feel the weight and you feel the heft, and you feel just the softness of the suspension, which is fine. It's a SUV, but it also has far more refined road manners versus something like a Jeep Wrangler or Ford Bronco. I mean, that's not really that hard to do, but we do have, of course, an all-independent suspension and unibody construction. Oh, that's such a good sound. I always love a straight 6. And this engine is good. It just, all the turbo lag has kind of disappeared because of the electric supercharger. And it's just interesting because you do have to rev this engine out to feel all of the power, which is not what I expected from a turbo engine, but it actually does like to rev. So I like what Land Rover has done here. But let's go ahead and try it again here really quick. Brake torque it. You can almost hear that supercharger whine slightly. 6.3 again. I don't know why the voice commands came in there, but it did. So yes, very consistent performance. And do I wish it was quicker? Sure, but it's a family vehicle. You don't need it to be any faster than this. I actually hear a little bit of pops from the exhaust, which is something I wasn't expecting. No four-wheel steering on this vehicle. And you definitely notice that you could use it at times when you have the longer wheelbase version, but overall, I have the same commanding view of the road. I can see everything. This thing just feels like a tank. It feels like I can run over a lot of things. And my tester, even with the 22-inch wheels, doesn't really affect the ride quality thanks to that adaptive air suspension, which is wonderful. These seats are also comfortable. I've been driving this vehicle, for 2 hours when I picked it up from the airport to drive it back to my house, and it was very comfortable. comfortable ride, comfortable seats, good visibility, tons of room. I love how wide this vehicle is. And the driver assistance tech in it works fine. The lane keep assist can be a little annoying at times. It just kind of is a little too intrusive for my taste. But the adaptive cruise works okay. Visibility in this car is also good out of the front, out of the sides, big side mirrors. I love the digital camera rearview mirror because without it, you put that into regular mode, and literally I just see the spare tire and head restraints, which you can lower if you'd like, but that digital camera rearview mirror is just the best invention ever for these big vehicles, especially if you plan to have, you know, a ton of people in the back. Their heads are going to be in the way, or you have stuff that's packed up to the roof. And in terms of fuel economy, this does run on premium gas. It has about a 20-gallon gas tank, just under 20 gallons. It was showing a little over 430 miles on a full tank, which is not bad. It is going to be relatively expensive fill-ups. However, in my week's worth of testing, on the highway, this did just a smidge under 20 mpg. On the city, it was doing around 15. So not great mpg, but for those of you who, you know, take advantage of having a lighter foot than I do, you should be able to get slightly better MPG. I would like to see Land Rover, you know, eventually offer a plug-in hybrid. They are going to go fully electric at some point. This vehicle also has voice commands where if I say that word, that wake word, it'll start asking me what I need. But overall, if you like the regular Defender, the 130 basically feels just like it. You'll notice it feels a little bit longer in tighter parking areas. And when you're turning, you kind of wish it had four-wheel steering. It has enough power, it's got great ride, it's really well done on the inside as well. I didn't hear any squeaks and rattles, which is surprising considering this is a Land Rover. They tend to have iffy build quality. But overall, it's certainly a unique option. I mean, if Jeep or Ford ever did a 3-row version of the Bronco, I imagine it would be somewhat like this in terms of the look. It's not going to ride or handle as well as this. I mean, this is a luxury SUV. But I'm just happy it exists for people in America that are just crossover hungry. They're going to really appreciate what the 130 has to offer just because of how much additional space you get in the third row. Not necessarily in the cargo area, but in the third row. So after spending a full week with the biggest version of the Defender family, the 130, I'm happy to report that everything that I like about the regular Defender is still pretty much here. It has really amazing driving dynamics, even out on the road with these big 22-inch wheels. The ride quality is excellent. It handles and rides more like just a big SUV as opposed to like a truck-based SUV. Remember, the Defender is Land Rover's most capable off-road vehicle. It competes with cars like the Jeep Wrangler and the Ford Bronco, but this has that typical British refinement that you expect from Land Rover, which is, again, a premium brand. The engine offers pretty good power. 0 to 60 in around 6.3 seconds is perfectly acceptable. I am sad to see that Land Rover doesn't offer the V8 in the 130, nor do they offer a plug-in hybrid here in the US. You can get a plug-in hybrid in other markets, but for some reason, Land Rover doesn't offer it here in America. They are, again, moving toward full electrification, so eventually we'll have an all-electric Defender, but for now, they just have inline 6-cylinder engines, at least for the 130. Their third row space is pretty usable. I'm surprised to find that average size adults like myself could sit back there for an hour or two and be comfortable. Just keep in mind that if you do carry 7 or 8 people in this vehicle, they're going to have to pack light because the space behind the third row is still not that great. It's an improvement over the 110, but again, you're going to want to get a more traditional car-based crossover if you need to actually carry 7 or 8 people and have enough room for all of their stuff. In terms of the second row, that is still pretty comfortable. And in terms of the design, if you can get past the kind of ungainly proportions of this vehicle at the back, it's still a really an attractive looking vehicle. And it better be, because this vehicle is definitely getting up there in terms of price. Now, if you guys want the 130, this is about a $10,000 premium over the 110. If you guys want to go to the SE trim, that's going to start around 10 grand higher. So this vehicle starts at around 68 grand, 78 grand for the SE. This first edition that I'm showing you comes pretty well equipped. It starts at around $85,000 with some of the options that my tester has, including destination and the color and some of the interior options that it has and these wheels. You're looking at just over $92,000. I know 92 grand's a lot of money, but it definitely has a lot of the premium trimmings that I expect from Land Rover as a luxury brand, but it also still has a lot of the capability. Although for those of you who need to do some serious off-roading, you're going to want to go for the smaller wheelbase model anyways, because this model here has a much worse departure angle because of how much longer it is. Well, with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2023 Land Rover Defender 130. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.